Hi, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead, and I have a little golden book. I grew up hearing little golden books and read them to both of my brothers as we were growing up, and would buy these also for my children. We had a big selection. So this one is called The Dog Sailor. I don't believe I've ever read this one. It was written by Margaret Wise Brown. Born at sea in the teeth of a gale is a storm, the sailor was a dog. Scuppers was his name. After that, he lived on a farm, but Scuppers, born at sea, was a sailor. And when he grew up, he wanted to go to sea. So he went to look for something to go in. He found a little submarine. All aboard, they called. It was going down under the sea, but Scuppers did not want to go under the sea. He found a little car. All aboard, they called. It was going over land, but Scuppers did not want to go over land. Scuppers was a sailor. He wanted to go to sea. So Scuppers went over the hills and far away until he came to the sea. This is what he looked like as he was headed there. Over the hills and far away was the ocean, and on the ocean was a ship. The ship was about to go to sea. It blew all of its whistles. All aboard, it called. All ashore that's going ashore. All aboard. So Scuppers went to sea. The ship began to move slowly. The wind blew it. In his ship, Scuppers had a little room. In his room, Scuppers had a hook for his hat, and a hook for his rope, and a hook for his handkerchief, and a hook for his pants, and a hook for his spyglass, and a place for his shoes, and a bunk to put himself in to bed. At night, Scuppers threw the anchor to the sea, and he went down to his little room. Interesting, he seems to be on this one all by himself. He put his pants on the hook for his hat, and his rope on the hook for his rope, and his pants on the hook for his pants, and the spyglass on that hook, and his shoes under the bed. And then he went to his bed, which was a bunk, and he went to sleep. Next morning, he was shipwrecked. Too big a storm blew out of the sky. The anchor dragged, and the ship crashed into the rocks. There was a big hole in it. Scuppers himself was washed overboard and hurled by the huge waves to the shore. There's Scuppers. He was washed up on the beach. It was foggy and rainy. There were no houses, and Scuppers needed a house. But on the beach was lots and lots of driftwood, and he found an old rusty box stuck in the sand. Maybe it was a treasure. It was a treasure to Scuppers. It was an old-fashioned toolbox with hammers and nails, an axe, a saw, everything he needed to build a house for himself. See, there's this ship. So Scuppers started to build a house all by himself out of driftwood. He built a door and a window and a roof, and a porch and a floor all out of driftwood. And he found some red bricks and built a big red chimney. And then he lit a fire and the smoke went up the chimney. When the stars came out, and he was sleepy. So he built a bed of pine branches and he jumped into his deep green bed and went to sleep. As he slept, he dreamed. If he could build a house, he could mend the hole in the ship. So the next day at low tide, he took his toolbox and weighted out the hammered planks across the hammered planks across the hole in his ship. At last the ship was fixed, so he sailed away. Let's see what his ship looked like. Until he came to a seaport in a foreign land. By now his clothes were all worn and ripped and torn and blown to pieces. His coat was torn, his hat was blown away, and his shoes were wore out. And his handkerchief was ripped. Only his pants were still good. You see how bad his clothes looks? So he went ashore to buy some clothes at the Army and Navy store and some fresh oranges. He bought a coat, found a red one too small. He found a blue one just right. It had brass buttons on it. Then he went to buy a hat. He found a purple one too silly. He found a white one just right. He needed new shoes. He found some yellow ones too small. He found some red ones too fancy. Then he found some white ones, just right. Here he is with his new hat and with his new shoes and his new coat on and with the shiny brass buttons. He had a can of polish and a cloth to keep them shiny. And he has a new handkerchief, a new rope, and a bushel of oranges. So now Scuppers wants to go back to the ship. And so he does. He looks pretty good. And that night when the stars came out, he took one last look through his spyglass and went down below to his little room, and he hung his new hat on the hook for his hat, and he hung his spyglass on the hook for his spyglass, and his coat on the hook for it. And he put his new rope on the hook for his rope, and his new shoes under his bunk, and he put himself in his bunk. And there he was where he wanted to be, a sailor sailing the deep green sea. His song. I'm Scuppers the sailor dog. I'm Scuppers the sailor dog. I can sail in a gale right over a whale under full sail in the fog. I'm Scuppers the sailor dog. I'm Scuppers the sailor dog. With a shake and a snort, I can sail into port under the full sail in fog. Well, I guess he thought he was a very good sailor. And that's where he wanted to be. Have any of you ever sailed on a boat, or maybe without the sail, with a motor, or maybe even a yacht? If you have, please leave me a message below. I'd like to know. I've been on a speedboat one time. Didn't like it too fast. And I've been on a raft a few times. I did kind of like that. But I've never been on any other kind of boat. Well, maybe I will one day. And maybe I'll just read about it. All right, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. I want to pray blessings on you and yours, in your house and out of your house, the day and the night. Whatever you do, keep dreaming. Good night. God bless you.